Hello, everyone. Welcome to BGR Nation and everyone tuning in. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jay Ell Alexander, and I'm the owner and CEO of Black Girls Run. Today, we have a very important discussion ahead of us talking about Black women's health. BGR has been around for over a decade now, and I'm super excited to be hosting this panel this evening because this is the first time we're hearing from experts in the field of health talking about Black women on the BGR platform. Very often when people hear about Black Girls Run and see our mission, they quickly find out that our mission is about movement, is about working to get our communities together to get us healthier. We suffer from poor health statistics that plague our communities, and BGR wants to be a resource and a tool to change that narrative. We all are aware of the daunting numbers, but we want today's discussion to be uplifting, positive, motivational. So throughout tonight's conversation, I challenge you to find solutions of how we can get more Black women on the pavement and more healthier. What you can do personally to get healthier, and what steps we will take together to change our future. We'd like to thank UCAN for helping us put this conversation together tonight. UCAN energy powders and bars helps you fuel your pursuit with a smarter energy. UCAN's patented ingredient, Superstarch, has the remarkable ability to provide a steady release of energy without spiking blood sugar levels. This helps you focus through long days, last longer in training, and keep hunger in check without compromising your health. Learn more at ucan.co. Again, UCAN.co. And Black Girls Run members can save 20% on their first order by using the code Black Girls Run, all one word. So, okay, with that, we're ready to dive in. First, I'd like to welcome our amazing guests. Welcome to registered dietitian Stephanie Carter and Dr. Cathy Yeckel, Assistant Professor of Clinical Public Health at Yale School of Public Health. I would like to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Welcome to BGR Nation, and tell the audience a bit about yourself and your story about why did you get into the health and fitness as career. And go ahead, dive right in. Give it a couple of minutes each to take the floor.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Stephanie Carter, and as Jay Ell mentioned, I am a board certified registered dietitian. I'm also a fitness professional, group fitness instructor, and personal trainer. My background originally started as a professional actor and dancer. I grew up as a classically trained dancer, and as I was going through my professional career in New York, I really decided I wanted to step a bit away from being an actor and dancer and create another career for myself that would sustain my future and create legacy for my family. And because I was so passionate as a dancer regarding my nutrition, I decided that I was going to go back to school to get my master's degree in nutritional science. So I moved from the East Coast, 3,000 miles away, out here to California. And it took about 5 years to get my master's degree, but I graduated with a master's degree in nutritional science. And right now I operate and own my own private practice where I specialize in performance nutrition, weight management, digestive health, metabolic health, and diabetes and heart health education, with the mission of stepping out into my community and really helping those that don't have access to quality nutrition and personal training and exercise, and providing that resource to them. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more later.
Thanks, Stephanie. I definitely appreciate that. Cathy, you have the floor.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is great. Thanks for inviting me to join this conversation today. I'm somebody that's had both a sort of academic career in health and fitness, as well as I'm a decades runner, if you will. So I'm somebody that has looked at obesity and diabetes and exercise physiology, both from studies. I've had Black girls, Black women join, participate. It's been wonderful. And I've also had athletes to couch potatoes participate in studies. So in a sense, I've gotten to see the whole spectrum and gotten to review the literature and hope to really bring some of the science and some of the current research to the floor today for this conversation, but try to actually integrate it and translate it for you. As I said, I've been a runner for decades, literally, and I started in high school when a classmate of mine decided that she wanted to try to run distance, and she didn't feel safe running by herself. And I think it's not only speaks to the fact that we need community and we need support, and that Black Girls Run, what a fantastic idea that we have a built-in community to support running and friendship and support health and the priority of health. And so my whole decades, I have found women runners and just the wonderful camaraderie around running. And I hope to bring that passion today, but also hope to bring some of the health solutions with it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Cathy. So tonight we're going to talk about a few things. We'll talk about holistic ways of improving health and fitness, some fitness tips, diving into nutrition, and then just overall lifestyle tips as well. But first, we want to lay a foundation of just the science. In this beginning discussion, we'll share some of the latest science on health for Black women and take a status check on Black women's health in America, and also provide you with some practical strategies to start taking control of your health and fitness, but then also to sustain those activities as well. So I'll open it up. Just why did you guys get into health and fitness and nutrition? What was that driver? I know we've had some brief conversations, but what was that, those early conversations at home, family, dynamics, all of that, that kind of fueled you into this career?
Well, speaking for myself, my mom is from Queens and my dad is from Brooklyn and New York, and they grew up very poor. So there was very little discussion about nutrition in my household. And in fact, when my parents moved us to Pennsylvania, to a very wide area, I had a lot of insecurities about my body type, especially as a young dancer from the age of 3. So it was really difficult because my parents we didn't have those discussions in our family about nutrition or proper health. It was, here's what we have for dinner tonight. Finish what's on your plate. Don't have leftovers because this is all there is. So I became interested in nutrition as a dancer who developed an unfortunate eating disorder. Had an eating disorder from teenage years into my college years. And it really wasn't until I decided to take a hold of my health and nutrition and see a registered dietitian that I knew that I had a passion for nutrition and helping those in my community. But as we kind of spoke about earlier, and a little bit about my story, my mother unfortunately passed away at the age of 54. And in hindsight, looking back, she died of coronary heart failure as a complication of type 2 diabetes. So the lack of conversation in our household about nutrition and health and wellness, I think did my mother a huge disservice. The fact that she didn't grow up with that conversation in her home, and we didn't have that conversation in our home, and her death, you most certainly can reverse diabetes. The gene is on once it's on, but you can reduce its effects in the body, and just you don't have to die of type 2 diabetes is what I'm trying to say. And so I wish we had more of those conversations. And so when I decided to become a registered dietitian, it really was fueled by the unfortunate passing and sudden passing of my mother. And I just think our community specifically, can have more of those conversations. There's a little bit of shame about talking about the fact that you developed type 2 diabetes. I know my mother specifically, she did not want to tell anyone. And in fact, before this call, I had a conversation with my father, and I said, you know, is this just something in the Black community, or you think this is just a general thing that people have, a shame for talking about it? He goes, he thinks it's a little bit more in our community. And as he was growing up, you just didn't talk about your personal life, especially what was going on in your health. So as I continue more in my career, I know that I want to try to change that stigmatism and get us talking about this so that we don't succumb to things like type 2 diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure and all these things that, you know, are treatable and preventable, you know. So that really drives me in my career.
Awesome. Well, definitely kudos to you to how we fuel that. I know growing up myself, we always referred to like diabetes as sugar. And, you know, they have sugar. And, you know, I never really understood what that meant. But I would also still, my family is Creole, Louisiana based. I would still see my family, you know, I had aunts that were double amputees, still fixing Cornish hens at lunch and dirty rice. And, you know, we celebrate family with food in the Black community. And that's a whole nother conversation about culture. But we'll dive a little bit more into nutrition a little bit later. But Cathy, I know we spoke about your family dynamic in terms of you running early on and experiencing some health issues. So talk about a little bit about that and how you got into the public health field.
Yeah, so it's interesting because now I look at it from running and obesity and cardiovascular problems and diabetes, but my chronic condition is actually asthma. And so when I was little, I realized that running actually made me feel better, even if while I was running, I felt horrible. So afterwards, so to the point where I would often literally sneak out of the house to run a little bit because I knew my lungs would feel better later. And I think it's a really important, what's driven me, I think, is also the fact that I've had it my whole life and I'm going to have it my whole life. So the asthma is, you know, I take medicine every day, but the running has helped tremendously in terms of my resilience, just sort of my ability to deal with the day-to-day stressors. And so one of the things that I hope that we can get into the discussion today is the fact that we now have this sort of daunting statistics for health all over the country. And I think what sometimes physicians forget about is the fact that people are dealing with this for years and years and years. So it's not like you can just put a Band-Aid on it. You have to figure out how to embrace this for your life. And I am such an advocate of thinking about health and empowering, and I hope to translate this to BGR Nation, because we need to embrace it as a lifelong pursuit. It is a journey, and that's why the support is so important, and it's why thinking through and making it less daunting is so important.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely the way we frame the message that makes the world of difference in terms of how we talk about health and fitness and nutrition. You know, most people think when they think of health and fitness or changing their lifestyle, it's diet and it's restrictive and you're taking away something that I can't do anymore that I enjoy. So I think, again, the way we frame the message will also be it'll be vital in terms of how we move forward. So I know when we first chatted a couple of weeks ago, I gave you guys a snapshot of who BGR is. And a lot of the times we're working with women that are in their mid-40s and older that are coming to the sport for the first time or starting physical activity after a long hiatus. And that's definitely something positive. But what do you think, you know, kind of someone that is starting or restarting a health and fitness journey and starting to get healthier later on in their life, what do you think that means to Black women's health? How do you think that has helped to either change the statistics and then just add a little color to the story in terms of how Black women are trying to get more healthy and more active?
Yeah. I think it's big that Black women are getting out in their communities and exercising and joining together in these small groups to take control of their health and wellness. And the reason why I say that is because unfortunately the health and fitness industry has set the standard for what healthy looks like. And a lot of times when gyms or boutique studios market their businesses, the ideal body size is very thin, very lean, very muscular, and unfortunately very white. So what does that mean for the Black woman, right? Who maybe wants to go into a space like a gym where she doesn't fit that body type or look like a lot of the people that are already in the gym. And what I find as a fitness professional, and I'm a trainer at one of the biggest clubs in the United States. I'm one of the only Black personal trainers in there, and very few of the members in the club are Black. And I think the reason why we're seeing that is because the health and fitness industry is so, the foundation is in, this diet culture. So for women to say, I'm not going to exercise, Black women rather, I'm not going to exercise just, to change my body, but rather I'm going to exercise for my health and to reduce stress. And because I love community and it makes me feel good, that's amazing. Because the more that we step into our own health and wellness, we can continue to change and push the industry to, and challenge that industry to address what our community needs. Because right now they're not doing that. And unfortunately, the CDC reports that, almost 50% of US adults tried to lose weight through exercising. And that's really a product of diet culture. And we know Black women just don't fit into that narrative. So I really love that I'm seeing Black women taking control of their health and wellness, especially in their 40s. And that's a really crucial time, to make sure you're looking at the things that you maybe did in your childhood that have added up into your 40s, then when you're seeing the high blood pressure and the heart disease, and like you were saying, your family, that they called it the sugar. And trust me, my family is from they're from New York, but they're also in the South too. So when they come visit us, and it's like, guys, we have like 5 generations that are diabetic, and we're still having all of the things that we shouldn't be having, and that's, like I said, it's really because we have been left out of the health and fitness industry, and you're just like, that's not for me, And lastly, I will say the health at every size movement is really getting us to accept our bodies, because we know that that's big, right? And that you don't have to look like what this standard body ideal of health is. That, hey, I have curves, I have hips, I have all these things, and I can still be healthy. And like Cathy, I could still run and do a marathon. And I think when we break that mold, we find success in the small things. Okay, I didn't run a marathon today, but I was able to get to the end of that block with my friend, and maybe I'm walking and people are perceiving me that I'm not exercising, but I know what I'm doing. I just ran a block, and if I have to walk the rest, then that's fine. Absolutely. So I love that that's happening for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely celebrating the small successes at whatever level they are. Mm-hmm. Cathy, I know you had mentioned, speaking of age, I know you had mentioned that 18 to 35-year-old threshold is one of the fastest kind of unhealthiest groups right now. Ooh. So how do we bridge the gap between this 18 and 35-year-old age range and the women that we see in BGR? What are some things that we can do to kind of create some balance, for lack of a better word, or kind of pull the next generation up to say, hey, this is what we're doing at 40. If you start this 10 years ago, you might not have to deal with the situation that we're in now. So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, let me first respond to the first piece in terms of the audience now, because there is some great research out there that I think your whole membership will embrace. And one of the things that's really good to know is that as we age, and this is men and women, And particularly women are at a disadvantage because we're starting to lose the ability to burn off more calories, right? So there is this sort of balance in what we're taking in and what we're being able to burn. And so an audience, I so applaud everybody that's starting to run because it gives a whole new meaning to exercise, to eat, not because of body shape, but because we still have to eat, and we don't want to end up eating, grandma, here's your cracker for the day. So it is one of these things where it's good to know that going in, that each decade we're kind of losing the ability to burn more calories. And one of the things that they found out with Black women in particular is that they are at a further disadvantage. But the beauty is that exercise helps correct it. And we know, and we'll talk a little bit further down the line why that is, but it's really good for women to realize that as we age, and I'm sure many of your audience is not just 40, but now we're in the 50s and 60s and the seniors, we have to be really careful to make sure that we don't just exercise that planned bit of movement, right? We don't just have that run during the day and then become couch potatoes. That really what ends up needing to happen is that we need to also keep adding in movement throughout the day, climb the stairs, do these kinds of things. We know, we used to be like, oh, you had to do 10 minutes in little bouts to make it count. Well, we know that isn't true anymore. The American College of Sports Medicine is embracing the idea that you can do little bits of movement and that those are just as important for health. So one of the messages that I hope comes across today is the fact that the existing BGR community, please realize that it's all this balance between not only sedentary, lack of sedentary and increasing your movement. So increase the running, the walking, but also pay attention to not being quite so sedentary. And so one of the problems that we're seeing is this growing, as you're saying, how do we bring in the other generations? And one of the things is allowing there to be the realization and the awareness that this younger population is now at risk. And who would think it, right? Who would think? And unfortunately, I've worked with teenagers that are already showing hypertension and poor blood sugar control. So this is a big spectrum, and it's so much easier to catch earlier and to figure out, do I or does my family? So if you can start the conversation, as Stephanie said, about finding out from your family members what risk factors are there so that you can address it, then you can start to think, okay, this is my little weakness, I can work with it. But in terms of the BGR community, what better way to say, unfortunately during the pandemic it's a little harder, but to use like community tracks are the most wonderful places as melting pots for all age groups. You can have little kids playing around in the center of the field. You can have people doing sprints. You can have people walking, socializing. You can have it be any abilities, and it becomes this incredible way to pool generations, to bring family, to pull neighbors in, and to really start to build this community of health. And everybody's there, everybody's talking, everybody's opening up to one another. And I think that's what is, you've started it already as this movement, but oh, please just pull in family members, pull in the little kids. It starts early, but I can honestly say that I've been running. I love running just as much now as I did when I was a teenager. It's a lifelong journey, and I think everyone can build their own journey, but I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome information in terms of, I love that community building through health and fitness, but that community track field, that we're this melting pot of bringing generations together, I think is that's a huge conversation, a huge a subject matter right there. I know, Stephanie, early on or early in the conversation, you talked about how your mom may have felt a little bit of shame of just talking about her health conditions, or that you didn't have those conversations around the dinner dinner table of, just health in general. And that lends a little bit to just distrust of the healthcare system in the Black community. I know you had mentioned some statistics about the percentage of Black dietitians and Black physicians. So kind of what's your approach or, your beliefs in terms of what you would tell the Black community as we kind of, we have this distrust, we're in this tangle. We have this distrust of the healthcare community, but at the same time, we're a community that's the most plagued with these health disparities. So we need the healthcare industry to be on our side. So how do we do this tug of war? And what have you seen kind of in your approach from that medical side?
I think it is very difficult for maybe someone in the BGR community to rely on their primary care physician or even registered dietitian for help. And the reason for that is basically the statistics, right? So 6% of physicians and surgeons in this country identify as Black. And then when we're looking at registered dietitians, only about 2%, 2.6 out of 94,000 registered dietitians in this country are Black. Those are astounding statistics. That means, a majority of the public health regulation that's being put out there is being put out there by white and many times men. So it's not always reflective of our community. So then there's also that distrust, as you mentioned, right? And sometimes, or even current research has shown that when somebody in our community goes to see their physician, they don't always get the best standard of care. And that can just include because there's lower rates of health insurance coverage, right? There may be communication barriers if we're just talking about people of color. And then unfortunately, there's racial stereotyping and implicit bias. So what can our community do to really break through those barriers? And I always tell my clients, take control of your health and wellness, right? Understand what's going on with you. Start talking to your family, as Cathy said. If you know that you have a history of heart disease in your family or diabetes, start understanding what that means and what that means for you. So that when you go see your physician, you're not being fed some nonsense, but that you can take control of your health and wellness and say, well, actually, I read in Harvard Medical or JAMA or any of these science, journals. Let's say our community is getting into some of these science journals, and you're like, actually, I heard this about my disease, or I heard that about my disease. Can you enlighten me more on that? Or can you talk to me more about that? And listen up, community. If you're not getting the answers you need, you go see somebody else, right? And I know for me personally, I do feel more comfortable with a Black physician or dietitian or GYN. I just do, because I know that they understand my struggle and my plight. But because there's so few of us out there, you may not be able. I have a hard time here in California finding a physician that is Black. And I'll tell you this, and I'm ashamed to say it, but I haven't been to see my primary care in 3 years because I keep searching for someone who is Black, knowing that diabetes runs in my family and heart disease. And I'm a registered dietitian, and I still haven't gone to get a regular checkup. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that we take control of our health and wellness. Don't let this community scare us, the healthcare community scare us. We will be taken care of. And honestly, I know we're talking a lot about community. If our community steps up and supports one another and utilizes resources, one of the best resources out there, I think, for mental health that we need right now is therapy for Black girls. I absolutely love their organization, and I think something the girls and the women in BGR, if you're not listening to Dr. Joy on therapy for Black girls, she's created a whole resource for women out there. If you need a therapist in your area, or you need books, or if we continue to support ourselves as a community and challenge the healthcare community to step up to us versus us coming up to them, we will take hold of our health. Yeah.
Good, good, good. Cathy, did you have any kind of, possibly coming from the public health realm, just how you've kind of seen it in research and possibly some tips to provide the Black community of how to, I guess, kind of do this dance, if you will, with the healthcare industry, and in terms of you really have to be sticking up for yourself, being an advocate for yourself, and really having a conversation versus just being fed information. You know, how do we approach that?
Yeah, I think it's, I think what Stephanie is saying is so real, because I remember with my allergist. So when I was first had asthma issues and I've been on medication for a long time, I would basically make him draw me out what things, if I didn't understand it, I would make him draw it so that I could actually understand what was happening. And so if you are leaving the office and you aren't quite understanding, ask for them to put it in a different way, right? So can they draw it? Can they give you another analogy to the information? So in other words, if part of it really is, can you understand what's happening? And then you can start to address it. So I know for my own sake, you know, I make sure that I ask. And I've had, I went to so many doctor's appointments with my father late in life, never early, of course, because the same kinds of generational issues. But he started to realize that it was useful to have somebody there that could talk to the physician. So maybe you find a friend or somebody you trust or whatever to go with you, because of course, if you're really stressed, it's really hard to listen anyway. But I would really encourage to don't let people off the hook. If you don't understand something, ask. You know, if you don't know how to take a medicine, ask. Find out more, you know, have them draw it, have them give a better analogy to you so that you can grasp in your own mind or from your own cultural reference or your own family reference what this means to you. And that would be my best advice in these conditions, because the physician wants to help. Yeah. I think oftentimes there's this barrier that is created where you know, and it can happen just being a woman, right? They could just sort of a dismissive attitude. But if you put them on the spot in terms of, say, if you take a vested interest and if you try to have them communicate better to you, you will, one, you show them that you're interested. So they are going to automatically, they'll be flattered. I mean, that's part of it. It's sad, but it's part of it. Yeah, so they'll want to help you understand.
Yeah, those are great tips. So we're going to take a shift a little bit to talk about fitness and nutrition. You know, in terms of fitness, I know a lot of our members that are tuning in this evening, you know, you're out running, you're training. Maybe this pandemic has spurred, you know, a new interest in fitness or in Zumba or roller skating or whatever it is. But what, you know, from both of you all side, being that you're both active and you're trying to push the community to become more healthy and active, what are some ways, some impactful ways that people can get started? How do people get started, especially in this pandemic right now where we're kind of this alone together? It may be even a bit harder to take that first step. So what is just some high level tips that you would give women to two things? One, get started for those that are just truly beginners. But then some people that this pandemic may be weighing on them and they need that oomph, for lack of a better word, to really get out there and to at least start getting movement now that they've been stagnant for a few months. So kind of from both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think if you're just getting started and you're not someone who has built-in habitual movement into your life, meaning you're not even someone who is prone to take the stairs or park a little bit away from the store and walk, you have to start small and realistic, right? I always talk about SMART goals, setting SMART goals with my clients. And that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So I love the idea of being real with yourself and saying, okay, I'm not going to run a marathon tomorrow, but maybe I can run to the end of the block and walk the rest of the 30 minutes that I'm going to get in. And, you know, the Centers for Disease Control and all other big health organizations, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the American College of Sports, they all say about 150 minutes a week. That may not be realistic for you because you have kids at home and you're homeschooling and now you're working from home, and just start small. For that person who's never gotten out there, just start small, one step at a time. You don't need to go out and buy a $3,000 Peloton. I have one. It doesn't make you work out more. It doesn't. You don't have to go out and get an expensive pair of Mizuno or Brooks running sneakers. Get what you can get and get the miles in as much as you can. And that's it, right? You don't need expensive equipment to get going. Now, for that person who is at home and the pandemic is really weighing on them, your motivation for what you're doing is going to be key to get you up and moving. So if you're only motivated to move your body because you're living in diet culture and you just want to lose weight, it's not a very strong motivator right now in the pandemic. You want to try to motivate yourself because it's good for just your mental health and your self-care and your sanity to get up and move your body. I know for me, gyms are closed here in California. Everything's closed. So I'm not moving as much and I feel it. So I try to walk an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, and that is just for my own sanity. And then if I could fit my run in, that's great. But I'll tell you one thing, I set my alarm every morning for 6 a.m. to do a 5-mile run. I run when I'm stressed. It's easy for me, but I haven't been able to get up out of bed and do it. I just do the walk for an hour, and that's okay, right? You can't put the same stress on yourself now that you did pre-pandemic. Your workout routine will shift. It's just going to be different. And I think just allowing yourself some grace and saying, okay, this is what I can do today, and that's okay, is going to be the way that we'll make it through this pandemic and keep our bodies moving and active. Yeah.
Yep. That key word is grace. That has been my word through this entire last 6 months. Like, Jay Ell, if it does not get done today, it is okay.
Yeah.
Cathy, how have you been staying active? Have you still been running? What would be some tips that you would give just those folks that need that extra encouragement and motivation?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Stephanie has been saying. I mean, one of the best ways for people who are just getting started is just to start by doing anything. If that means strolling after dinner, pull a family member along and get out and walk to the end of the block and back. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I can do 2 blocks. I could do 3 blocks. So in other words, it does build on itself. And that's a good thing, because you also need to get your body familiar with this movement. If you're inside, I notice I'm one of these people that I would walk to work every day. So all of a sudden I'm not walking to work. So I'm like down like a lot of steps in my day that I had to do before. So I've had to build in those steps. I'm like Stephanie. I try to, like, first thing in the morning, I get out and I don't do the hour in the morning, but I get out and do a couple laps around the few blocks that are near me that I feel comfortable doing. And then I come back and then I try to get a run in later in the day. Try to pull my husband out for a walk later in the evening. But sometimes don't be fooled by the fact that you doesn't all have to be at once. As I said, it can be little bits of movement. And sometimes when we're stressed, it's good to sort of get up and down. If you're working at your computer, if you're doing things where you're so sedentary during the day, get up, stretch, do some funny old-fashioned calisthenics, do some high leg lifts, do whatever it takes, do some dance moves. I tell you, dancing is one of the best ways. You're cooking, dance. It's a great way to start to build an activity, and it's fun to do. So I think that's part of the movement. I will say, one of the most interesting pieces of new research that can start to maybe tickle the back of your head and start to just to think about it a little bit differently is what we're starting to realize about muscle and about the fact that different people actually have different kinds of muscle composition. And what do I mean by that? So think back to when you were little. Were you the speedy rabbit or were you the tortoise type in terms of your muscle? Did you like to sprint and then would you get fatigued right away? Or were you one of those people that were in it for the long road, right? And the reason I'm saying that is we're finding that that tracks with health. And so that between lean and obese, and between just sort of the abilities to lose weight, that if you have that rabbit type muscle, it can be harder. But the good thing is with running and with changing how you train, right? So if you have the more rabbit, it means you need to push yourself to do a little bit more endurance. If you have the more tortoise type, it's good to push your rabbit self. So it helps to bring those combinations together, which all start to improve your health along the way. So I would say if you need something to motivate you, also think about the tortoise and the hare, right? Are you the tortoise type or are you the rabbit type? And I'm turning down to your core. What does that give you? Because these pieces of information can actually, the story is starting to build. In fact, it's even being built for blood pressure, that if you're more the rabbit type person, you tend to have the likelihood that you might be running higher blood pressure. So all these things, and this has been shown with Black women, all right? So all of these things are starting to pull together to be a picture that could help motivate us, because it can help show women and everybody, women, men, doesn't matter who you are, like maybe how they should train and what types of things they can work on. And sometimes people want to just have something that they know they should work on, right? So I totally agree with Stephanie. Stress can make it really hard to get out the door. It can make you feel more sore. It can make you feel more fatigued. But I tell you, this is where the running starts to help. And if you persist a little bit, brace that tortoise self, because what it's going to do is it's going to start to make you more resilient to the stress. So if you can hold with it a little bit, you can start to build resilience and start to actually have some of those daily things not bug you so much.
Awesome. That's good. Great advice. Great advice. I think it's key about just building habits. That's something that I definitely hear from what you're trying to communicate. So now that we've talked about fitness, we've kind of laid a small foundation in terms of the science behind Black women's health. We can talk about something that we all love, which is food. We know that we can't outrun a bad diet, whether we're a tortoise or a hare,
Right.
but we love to, talking about nutrition, and I think one thing that both of you communicate is that the great thing about diet is, I don't even want to call it diet, but just the way we, our relationship with food is that this is something that we can change right away. And I know, Cathy, we talked about some factors that show in blood pressure within the Black community in terms of the types of food that we're taking in. So, kind of talking about nutrition now, what are some things that we can do just right now, immediately, that can really kind of change the layout of our health in the Black community with our relationship with food?
Yeah, and food, as Stephanie mentioned, food and you probably have also said it, the food and culture go so hand in hand. So I think the first thing you have to do is commit to saying, okay, I can have my special foods. Sure, sometimes you have them, but on a daily basis, start to think about swapping for healthier choices. And Stephanie can talk more about that. But some of the research that's been very recent and very key, and this is even worse for men, by the way, but for women and for Black women, the idea that the food, the Southern diet score, it's called. So in other words, processed meats, fried foods, lots of salt in the diet. It's sort of this Southern diet sort of profile is what they're calling it, right? It's a score. If that sort of describes your diet, that is responsible for a great deal of that extra hypertension, that extra bit of high blood pressure in the Black women's community. And so simply starting to swap out and shifting that diet, not to never have it, but to start to shift it on a daily basis could be huge. So 30%, that's huge. Just it could be one of those things that can change. And by the way, for men, it's more like 60%. So when you talk about your whole families, this is a good thing to start to reshape, refigure how food is identified in the family and the community, because it's clear now that it is contributing to a large amount of high blood pressure.
Yeah, I think, Stephanie, if you want to add on to that, you know, definitely coming from your being a registered dietitian, how do you communicate with kind of the Black community in terms of our relationship with food and how we start changing this narrative of what we're bringing to our kitchen table?
I think the first thing, you know, I'm an anti-diet dietitian, so we know diets don't work and restriction doesn't work. So if you love something, my family down south loves these collard greens with these ham hocks in them, very salty, and then the fried chicken and the cornbread. No one is telling you you have to not have those things, right? Because restriction and diets, they just don't work. So I come from a place of taking on a holistic approach to nutrition, right? So if we look at a balanced plate, just to start, right? Half of your plate should be non-starchy vegetables, then a quarter of your plate is clean protein, and then the other quarter of your plate is some complex carbohydrate. Then healthy fats, you know, olive oil and those things, and then make sure you hydrate like a boss. Now, if that means that plate looks a little different at dinner because you want something like cornbread and fried chicken, that's okay. Let's start to look at our day as a whole, right? Instead of looking at each meal saying, okay, this is what I need in totality across my day, across my week. So if you crushed a bag of popcorn like I can easily do, and I don't know how it happens, you did that, right? Okay, I did that, and I you know, I had that popcorn and now it's gone. So what do I need in the rest of my day? Okay, I didn't have any veggies today. I didn't hydrate enough today. So I'm gonna make sure I get those things in. And anyone who knows me, I don't like sweets, I don't like chocolate, but put potato chips or anything salty in front of me, it's gone. And so I know that's an issue for me. So one of the other biggest things outside of a balanced plate and not thinking about restricting any foods is listening to hunger and fullness cues. Most times, and I come from a family where we weren't sure if we were going to get a meal, it's clean your plate, right? And so we never were trained how to listen to our hunger and fullness, because it's like, don't listen to it and just eat, right? Finish your plate. So listening to your hunger and fullness is so crucial to no matter what you're eating. That's why people say, especially dietitians say, you can eat anything in moderation, because you literally can. There's a point where your body is sending you a signal. You know, there's hormones, leptin and ghrelin, that trigger you to be hungry and trigger you to stop. The cues are there. It's harder to hear them if you've never listened to them before. So again, allow yourself some grace. But once you're getting to Thanksgiving full, you've gone way off the chart, right? So you want to kind of be in that gray area where you're like, I'm satisfied. I don't need any more. I'm good. And if that means you leave a little on your plate or leave a little for leftovers for tomorrow, do that. Be a boss and take control of your nutrition. Don't worry about restriction, right? With that being said, if you do have a chronic disease or you are pre-diabetic and you've met with your care team and they have said, hey, you want to be mindful of these things, then definitely be mindful of those things. Because if you're not supposed to be having them because you have kidney disease, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm going to have avocados today. So you can't do that. But, you know, follow your care team if you're dealing with something. And if you're not, if you're otherwise healthy individual, just listen to your body. Your body is going to tell you what you need.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Great advice. Speaking of the popcorn, you must be in my kitchen, because a good Utz white cheddar popcorn is my vice. It is my vice. So now that we've talked a little bit about fitness, health, nutrition, we'll kind of close out just what's next? What does health look like next for the Black community? So just a couple of questions. You know, during this current social climate, the pandemic, it's a lot going on. And I know we both chatted about, all of us chatted about, you know, getting out in the morning to walk a few blocks, or Stephanie walk an hour. I make sure that I get out and run in the morning, just so I can set my day of this feeling mentally, physically, all of the above. So what are two questions that I have is, what's some ways that we can lower our stress and the effects of stress on the body? I know, Cathy, we had mentioned a little bit about a study of stress and metabolism. So if you want to comment on that, of just, what does it mean to get to that place of health and things that we can be doing now in terms of health, nutrition, but also the stressors that happen that's going on currently?
Sure. So one of the things that we have realized with stress, and I already mentioned that moderate, just regular moderate exercise, so the running, the walking, can help sort of build resilience to stress. But there's a great study, and I think it's really relevant for this community in terms of taking the diet that had the same amount of carbs, but what they did was they looked at people that were, because the instinct is to grab all those simple fast carbs, right? The sugary types of things for most people. I know that we've been talking about popcorn and these kinds of things. But what they did was they swapped out the sugary. They had one, and these are the same people. They did the sugary, and then they did, for a few weeks, they had the carbs were all those kind of fast carbs, and then they did slow carbs, so those complex carbs. And what they found was that, yeah, lo and behold, that although we think that those fast carbs are giving us lots of energy, it was just the opposite. So the people had less energy, they had more fatigue, and they had more mood disturbance. So it was counterintuitive to what most people think. And I think why it's so relevant in terms of this community is the fact that what a clear picture has been established, and it's from girls all the way up to the elderly, is that we have an issue, and this is partly why there's this big risk for type 2 diabetes, is the fact that the metabolism sort of surges, and when people take in these fast carbs, they have really high of that hormone insulin response. And what that does is that it prevents you from burning fat. It prevents you from having, it's giving you lots of extra calories too. But if you can slow it down, it takes all the burden off. So one of our sponsors today is a UCAN, and that is like the super, super slow carb. And what that is it's helping you set the tone so that you don't have to worry about your blood sugar. You don't have to worry about all the oscillations and the high swings and low swings, and can just keep steady energy for very long periods of time. It was developed for people that had a condition where they couldn't keep blood sugar. They can produce their own blood sugar. So in this community, if you feel like when you're going out to exercise, you're all of a sudden fatigued, it may be because you've had too much of simple sugars right before. And if you're fatigued afterwards, it may be that you're starting to think, oh, I'm going to suck back lots of sports drinks. Well, it may not work, because it's a known problem with Black women in particular. So it's just how the metabolism works, and it's a good thing to be aware of, because it's one of those things you can start to control simply by swapping out really sugary things for just more complex, slowly digesting carbs.
Great. Stephanie, if you want to kind of close this out, what does it mean to kind of get to this place of health for the Black community, especially in the times that we're in now?
I think it's really important for us to prioritize self-care right now, whatever that looks like for you. For me, I try to meditate, maybe journal, I pray, I go for a walk, maybe do some yoga, whatever self-care you can get. Sometimes it's me watching a romance movie on repeat. I like doing that. Or whatever it is for you, because here's the thing about stress is it really can impact and hurt your health. Especially, just think about if you're exercising and you're running normally. The normal response is for your body to release cortisol, because exercise is a stress on the body, and cortisol is going to be released to kind of reduce inflammation. Now, if your body is normally dealing with exercise in a healthy way and releasing cortisol as it should, think about the extra stress you're putting on yourself because the kids are at home, you're working from home, the bills are piling up, your husband, your wife, your spouse, whomever it is in your ear, your Wi-Fi is not working, so now your kid can't, all the things that are happening in our day now because we're in this pandemic fatigue is sitting on, right? So that's another stress that you're having, and it's still the same response, right, from the body, right? The body releases cortisol and adrenaline in this fight or flight response to deal with stress. And you really could see a lot of things happen in your body, including high blood sugar, high blood pressure, increased risk of heart attack, cognitive impairment, all of these things just stemming from stress. So I think it's okay to just take a beat, close the door to that bathroom if the kids are there or whoever is there, and do what you need to do to release the stress. It is super important. And as I was mentioning earlier, I'm a holistic dietitian. I don't just think about fitness or nutrition. I really think about the whole picture, and your mental health is a really big part of that. And right now, with everything that's going on in the world, in our country, it is really important for us to be taking care of ourselves mentally, especially for Black women right now. It's especially heavy for us. So to have those moments, get on a Zoom call with your girlfriend and have a glass of wine. Don't worry about the calories, right? Just have it, right? Do what you have to do to keep yourself sane at the end of the day, because let me tell you, pandemic fatigue is real and it is here, and we have to learn how to just, I don't call this our new normal. I just call it our temporary normal. Temporary. At some point, we're going to move and shift into something else. So we just need to be able to be adaptive. And again, I come back to this, allow yourself grace, right? If you need to spend the whole day in the bed, like I do some days, that's what it is. You know, that's what you got to do. You don't want to call your family. I turn my phone off and put it in the drawer, and I just I'm not dealing with it today. And that's okay. And that's okay. So I think us coming together, dealing with our self-care by ourselves, but also embracing our community and reaching out to a friend and say, hey girl, are you okay? I haven't heard from you in a while. Can I support you? What do you need? Going to a grocery store for somebody, run or something. Like doing what you need to do for yourself, and then stepping out and helping others. Like they say on the plane, put your mask on first and then help somebody else. But we need to take care of ourselves, and then we can take care of our communities, and then we'll all get through this together.
Awesome. Well, that is a great note to leave off on this evening. I want to thank our guests, Cathy and Stephanie, for just your time this evening, for the information. I could feel your passion through this webinar, and I just want to thank you for your passion and dedication to the field. I'm appreciative of you sharing this information this evening with the BGR community. You know, information and knowing is really the first step. So I think tonight, I hope is a really good step forward as we continue the BGR movement to really get our communities healthier. Again, we want to show a huge gratitude and appreciation to UCAN for the platform tonight, for helping to put this conversation together, for pulling myself, Cathy, and Stephanie together to have this very open conversation about Black women's health. UCAN Energy Powders and Bars helps you fuel your pursuit in smarter energy. UCAN's patented ingredient Superstarch has the remarkable ability to provide a steady release of energy without spiking blood sugar levels. And this helps you focus through long days, last longer in training, and keep your hunger in check, which we talked about, without compromising your health. So again, you can learn more at ucan.co. And Black Girls Run members, you all can use the code Black Girls Run for 20% off your first order. So right now, it's the end of our call, but it's not all the way over. I need everyone to tune in to our live session with Stephanie to answer any questions that you have. Join Stephanie on Zoom. You would have received a direct link to Zoom for Q&A. We will be giving away 3 comprehensive counseling sessions with her and 3 UCAN product packages for those tuning in. So again, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you to Cathy and Stephanie. And thank you to everyone for tuning in, and continue to preserve the sexy. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe.